All right. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome. Today's class is on power prospecting, expireds, and for sale by owners. This is normally like a 3-hour class, but at Wayne's request, I've expanded it out to 5. So we're going to have a great day together. Just kidding. I've truncated this down as best I could to hopefully an hour, maybe a little bit more than that. But we're going to go ahead and jump right in and start talking about for sale by owners and what our goals are for today. So we're going to be looking at the opportunities that we can get with expireds and FSBOs. We're going to talk about how to find those prospects. We're going to talk about sample dialogues that we can use, as well as mail outs that we can use. We're going to talk about the approach to each group because it is different. Each has a different mindset. And we're going to talk about the timing with prospecting to each one of these groups. So those are our goals. So why expireds and FSBOs? This is like the lowest hanging fruit in the jungle as far as seller leads go. Every time an agent says to me, I want more leads, I feel like just running the expireds out of the MLS because there are just so many of them down here. I think unlike other markets where we have attendees on the call this morning, we have transitioned into a buyer's market. We have depending on which segment of the market you're talking about, either a little over 6 months or a little over 8 months of inventory. And we're seeing a lot more expireds. If you are in a low inventory market and in a seller's market, you probably have a preponderance of FSBOs who think that they don't need you. So the beauty of prospecting expireds and FSBOs is they exist in any market. And prospecting, going after these folks will make you a very good salesperson, and they're already a lead. I mean, it couldn't be any easier to find them, and we'll talk about all of that. So the other advantages to all of this, a lot of agents are afraid of going after expireds and for sale by owners. They may give it a try once or twice and then sort of get shut down and shut out by objections and then decide not to move forward with prospecting those groups anymore because they're, for lack of a better word, somewhat afraid of them. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And the beauty of expired listing sellers is they've already raised their hand to say, A, I want to sell my house, and B, I'm willing to pay a commission. So you can't get much better of a lead, in my opinion, than that. So the benefits of having active listing inventory, especially as we're going into this post NAR settlement world that we're now approaching. The beauty of a listing, of course, you get that contract commitment from a customer. They're going to pay you a fee, a brokerage fee, if you get the job done. If you market and manage that correctly, you're going to get your paycheck. And if you leverage listings and do that correctly, and we'll talk a bit about that, it will actually generate more business for you. And it gives you a tremendous number of success stories that you can use in your future conversations with both buyers and sellers. And in my opinion, when you have a lot of listings, you get to have a life. You'll have no shortage of buyer leads if you have a lot of listings, but you get to manage your business quite a bit better. A top agent friend of mine once said that if you working with buyers is like manual labor and working with sellers is like working with your brain. It's just easier to do, and it allows you more control over your schedule and your life. So we're going to talk a little bit about how we're going to do this. If you want to be successful in real estate, there's two things you need to be good at. That is prospecting and presenting. If you nail those two things, you are good to go. Today, we're going to be talking about prospecting. We have other classes, and in fact, I think Wayne did one very recently on the listing presentation. So that's a different topic. We may touch on that a little bit today, but today we're going to talk about prospecting in order to get appointments. Once you get the appointment, if you get across the threshold and you are an excellent presenter, you will have a much higher chance of getting those listings. And if they're marketed correctly, you will get your paycheck, which is a beautiful thing. So in order to be successful at prospecting expireds and for sale by owners, you have got to have a value proposition. And normally when I teach this class, I do a big group exercise. Typically, I'll have anywhere from 10 to 20 in the classroom. I'll have a flip chart and we'll go through the value proposition of the company and the agents themselves. And we'll generate a very nice list of the things that make you different. Wayne and I did a class, I want to say a month or so ago, Wayne, maybe 2 months, on value proposition. And that class was recorded and it's in our training library. So I would invite you to go take a look at that, because if you don't know how you are different and what you do differently, you will have a much greater challenge at being successful with expireds and for sale by owners. But can somebody on the call right now just throw out a value proposition that you offer your customers? And specifically in this context, we're talking about listings. Does anyone want to share with us, with the group, what you feel you do pretty darn good when it comes to marketing your listings and managing your listings? Don't be shy.
I'll throw one out that I take professional pictures.
There you go. Professional photography. I think we would all, everyone on the call would agree that professional photography is not something every agent does. I think we've all seen listings in the MLS that were represented poorly by the photography. And to that end, I would add to that, the narrative description that you use to describe the property is also a big selling point, right? So the basis of our marketing in real estate is photography and those descriptions. So if you use a professional photographer, if you use drone video, if you use Matterport types of virtual walkthrough technology, and if you use copywriting services, and that could be, the company I worked with before, we had a marketing department, we had professional copywriters on staff, so we were able to leverage that in our conversations. But you have copywriting services too. It's called ChatGPT, and that can help you write your narrative description of those properties. So that's a great example, Wayne. Thank you so much for throwing that out, because this is going to be the basis of our prospecting messages with these groups. So that kind of begs the question. Let's get started with expired. Sorry, I'm going back and forth on my keyboard here. Let me ask you a question. Why do listings expire, gang?
Price.
Okay, price. Everyone agree with that? Everyone always says price, and I would not disagree with you, but I would make a suggestion. Approach these sellers with a different sort of messaging. When I was prospecting expireds here in Southwest Florida, everyone that I talked to would tell me stories about realtors calling them up after the listing expired and telling them that they were overpriced. And these were agents that were talking to a prospective seller or an expired seller on the phone, never had even seen the property, and said it was overpriced. And as you can imagine, many of those sellers kind of felt like, how can you be telling me my house was overpriced if you haven't even taken the time to come out here and take a look at it? So I would recommend that you approach this a little bit differently when you're having that conversation with the seller, and go for a marketing sort of context. So the 4 P's of marketing: price, product, promotion, and placement. So pricing, as Wayne correctly pointed out, is a big reason why many of listings that we see in the expired list on the MLS, and that's probably the main reason why it expired. But don't approach the seller just beating them up on price. And there's a strategy for getting them to give you permission to approach them with a lower price. And we'll talk about that in just a few minutes. But price, product, promotion, and placement. So we all know what the product is. That's the house. How is the house presented? Is it clean? Is it staged? Is it marketable? Has that seller been properly coached on how to present that property? We have some really cool advantages with ERA Real Estate through our Real Vitalize program to help with that. Promotion, just as the word suggests, that's your advertising and your marketing. And placement, where are you putting those messages, and who is your target market for that marketing? So when you're going after your expired seller and talking to these folks, do not focus just on price. They don't want to hear that. Talk about marketing. So next question. Why does the seller think it expired? You think it's price. Wayne said it's price. Every agent I've ever talked to always says it's price. What do the sellers say?
The agent didn't do their job.
Boom, look what's
There
up.
you,
Robin sucked.
Bam.
there you
There
go.
you are. Our new arrival to ERA and an experienced agent from Minneapolis. I'm thrilled to have you on the call. Yes, it's the agent's fault, right? The realtor did not do their job, okay? And they are going to be angry with you when you have this conversation with them because you are an ambassador of an industry that has let them down. So do not be the agent that runs away from that aggressive, very displeased, probably frustrated and very angry seller. Don't take that personally. That's an opportunity for you to have that conversation with them, but they are absolutely they're not going to be very happy. So just let them share with you what they think. But that is where it all starts. It's basically the real estate agent's fault. I had one expired listing appointment here in Cape Coral back in the day. It was 2011, so it was a very crappy market. Lots of expired, so I had lots of opportunities. But so I sent this guy a mailer, and we'll talk about mailers here in a bit. And from that mailer, he phoned me, and on that phone call, I set the appointment. And when I got back to in front of my computer and then looked up the property, I was like, oh no. The photos looked terrible. I mean, the house just looked terrible. And the first sentence in the MLS description was all caps, and it said, absolutely no FHA or VA offers, and then 3 exclamation points. So you tell me, what does that tell you about the property? The photos look terrible, and the first sentence in the MLS is absolutely no FHA or VA offers. What does that tell you?
It won't pass the inspection.
Yeah, there's a lot wrong with this property, right? There's something going on here. So I almost canceled the appointment. And then I thought, nope, this is going to be good practice. I went out there. I actually thought I was at the wrong house because when I arrived at the correct address, the house was beautiful from the outside, looked nothing like the first photo in the MLS, which it turns out the agent had used from the tax record from a few years ago before the current owner even owned the property. It was an awful picture. So I knock on the door. This very neatly dressed man opens the door, and this house is just neat as a pin. The gentleman is very neat and tidy. The yard looks good. The shrub, everything looks so much different than the way it looked in the photos, which were very poorly taken in very poor dark light. And this guy was just angry as hell. He used one particular expletive that starts with the letter F over and over and over again. He was so angry at his agent. I ended up listing this property in 2011. Again, terrible market, for about $5,000 more than it expired for. And it was on the market for 6 months before I got to this guy, and I had it under contract in 2 weeks. I took professional photos, I wrote a nice description, and most importantly, I coached him how to sell, or rather how to show the property. And that prior agent had never explained any of that. But this guy was just so angry during the appointment, and I just let him blow off steam and drop all of his F-bombs all over me. I let him do that, and I told him what we needed to do to get the property sold. We did it. We got it sold. He got moved out of Cape Coral, and he was very happy at the end. So don't let that anger turn you off, because you can turn that around and turn that into a solid prospect. So speaking of angry sellers, what do you think expired listing sellers' top 3 complaints are about their past experience? They start with the letters C, M, and N. What do you think that stands for? Let's start with C. What do you think the C stands for? I'm an expired seller. I'm not happy with the agent that I just expired with. I'm not gonna relist with that person. One of the things I didn't like about that agent was their lack of
Communication.
You got it. Look, what's up? Communication. I can't tell you how many of my expired listing appointments told me that the only time they heard from their agent was at the listing and just before it was getting ready to expire. Never were provided any ongoing marketing updates, no showing feedback, nothing like that. So communication is one of those things you should add to your value proposition when you're going after an expired seller, because they think you're going to do the same thing the last seller did. So if you can not only articulate, but show them examples of how you communicate with that seller during the listing process, that will go a long way. What I would always do, and I would bring examples of my weekly marketing reports that I would send out to my sellers. I'd literally print them out that I had for current listings or recently closed listings. And I would bring those with and just literally show them this is the kind of thing I'm going to email to you on a weekly basis to show you what we're doing with the marketing. That will overcome the commission complaint. What do you think the M stands for? I'm an expired listing seller. I'm upset with my prior agent because they didn't do any of this. It starts with an M.
Marketing.
Marketing. You got it. Wayne, we're going to have to give Robin Sook a gold star here. I love this. So yeah, lack of marketing. So again, bring examples of your marketing. We have to do much more than just put it in the MLS. And marketing, again, the things that we've already talked about, whether we're a drone photo user, professional photography, Matterport, professional copywriting services, that sort of thing. And then the N, I'm an upset seller and I'm displeased with my agent. Now, most sellers don't actually, they don't know that this is one of their complaints, but if you can plant the seed in their head, N stands for negotiation. Their prior agent may have done little to no negotiation. So one of the questions that I would always ask a seller when I had the appointment, I would say, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, you guys were on the market for 6 months or 4 months or whatever it was. So may I ask, in that amount of time, approximately how many showings did you have? And they'll answer that question. And then I will say, and what was the majority of the feedback you got from your agent about how those showings went? Most of the time, they kind of really didn't understand the question. And I would say, so after an agent would show your property, and your listing agent would follow up with that agent to see how the showing went, what did you have any consistent feedback? And again, a lot of what I would hear is my agent did not do that. And when I hear that, then that's my opportunity to say, oh, that's a shame. One of the things that I do with all of my sellers as a part of my listing and marketing practice is to make sure that we follow up with each and every agent that shows the property to find out how it went. There are some automated services that will do that for us, but I prefer the personal touch, and we'll try to reach out by phone and have a conversation and then provide that feedback to you so that when we are continuing to look at our marketing strategy, if there's some consistent feedback that we think we might be able to address, we can strategize around that. And may I ask, did you receive any offers during your listing period? And many sellers would say yes. And I would say, tell me a little bit about that. Did you, the offer was obviously not acceptable. How did you respond? Oh, we rejected it, many sellers would say. And I would say, well, did you guys counter the offer? They may or may not have done so. And then I would ask, how did you counter the offer? Did your listing agent have you prepare a counter offer form and submit that in writing back to the other agent, or was that done verbally? Guess how many of the sellers said verbally?
All of them.
Damn near all of them. That's a shame. Damn near all of them would say, oh, we just went back, verbally, which means there's a listing agent who's calling up a selling agent and saying, seller wants full price. And now the selling agent is calling their buyer up and saying, seller wants full price. And now the selling agent is actually, that means the buyer's agent is now actually negotiating with their own buyer, which is not good. And we're not doing a good job of negotiating. So what I would say to that is, oh, that's a shame. If we receive any offers, anytime I get an offer on any of my listings, I will always visit with you in person, preferably at your house here or at the office, and we will go through that offer. And if there's anything we don't like about that offer, we will prepare a proper counter offer. And then when we submit that back, that gives me the opportunity to write a cover letter explaining why we're countering and to point out the advantages and great amenities or great elements of your property and kind of re-articulate that. The way I would do that is I would respond back to that buyer's agent, thanking them and their buyers for their interest in the property, saying we're attaching a counter offer, and the reason we're countering at this price is, and then fill in the blank with whatever the selling points of the house are: new roof, refinished pool, whatever it is, new air conditioner, and just reiterate all of those things. I can guarantee you that if you write a very nice email, 99% of the time, that buyer's agent is going to simply forward it to the buyer. And if you write it in a way that kind of helps the buyer to understand the value and shows some respect, you're a lot more likely to bring the buyer and the seller together. And that's what we call good negotiation. Very few agents will do that in our market down here in Florida. I don't know how it is where you are, but most of the agents do the verbal schmerble thing, and that leads to no contract. So that's an unfortunate complaint that a seller may not even know they have, but you need to kind of fill them, educate them on that. When you're having this kind of conversation with an expired seller sitting at their dining room table, they're interviewing you, possibly to relist the property, and you're sharing all of this with them, it's a very eye-opening conversation for them. And you're not disparaging the prior agent. You're just saying what you do in these circumstances. And all you're doing is asking questions about how their prior experience was and where you see the opportunity to fill in what your, again, value proposition is in that context will set you way apart. Any questions on that? All right. The other thing that I would recommend that you do, and this goes back to what Wayne said, we all as real estate professionals know that ultimately it was the price that caused the property to expire or the listing to expire. When you have this conversation, when you get an appointment with an expired listing seller, one question I will always ask is how they went about setting the price. So the way that would normally go is, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, you listed your property 6 months ago and you listed it for $650,000. So may I ask, when you did that, was that your price or was that the price that your agent recommended? 99% of the time, they will throw their agent under the bus and they will say that was the agent's recommended price. Now, we all know chances are that's probably not true. But what they just did was they gave you permission to have a conversation with them about repositioning that listing at a more competitive price. They just gave you permission to have that because they're not going to take ownership of having overpriced it. They know it's overpriced. Any questions on that? It's a great technique. Asking them how that price was set and then making it a multiple choice question. Was that your price or was that the price your prior agent recommended you listed at? They will always say it was the other agent. And now you have the opportunity to have the pricing conversation with them. It's a very easy way to go instead of you saying, oh, well, you were overpriced. They don't want to hear that. They know it, but they don't want to hear it. Okay.
So Roger, you're the consistency here is sort of letting them vent, letting them, talk. Like it's not you coming in and just, like you when the seller's F-bombing, if you tried at that point to like step in or say anything, you'd have been buried. So, so consistently I'm hearing is you're just, give what you need to, but then let them talk, let them vent, let them blame whoever, because slowly they're getting they're getting your message. So I just wanted to kind of like and it's sitting with me. I've done it before, but now it like hearing it again, it's like, oh yeah, shut up and listen and that type of thing. So
Exactly. No, I so appreciate you saying that. And with that guy that was F-bombing me, the whole time I was in his house, he had one of those little tiny dogs, Chihuahua type of thing, something about that big. And I love dogs, but this dog did not stop yapping. It was and it was he had put it in a separate room. So it wasn't like it was underfoot or anything, but it would not stop barking. And it was it was an unpleasant sort of environment to be in because I felt like I was distressing this dog. It was, not happy that I was in its house and blah, blah, blah. And so I said to him, based on some other things that he had told me about the showing experience, I said, well, his name was Don. I said, well, Don, let me ask, when you had showings during your listing, were you at home for those? And he said, yeah. And I said, and was your dog kind of put in that front office room like it is right now? And he said, yeah. I said, did your agent ever give you any advice to not be home during the showings? He said, no, I was never told that. And I said, it's really advisable for you to not be home. And I then went into all of that. And he was sort of, again, upset that his prior agent never told him that. So here he is, he's home. And again, he's kind of an angry guy, and he's making buyers and their agents feel uncomfortable in the house. And of course, the dog is barking. So we kind of had to get through that. He required a little bit of coaching on how to be a good seller, and his prior agent simply never provided that. All right, so expired sellers, they've got 4 options. They can relist with the same agent, they can relist with a different agent, they can go FSBO, or they can take the house off the market. So 64%, according to a national survey by Hofstra University, 64% of expired sellers will relist with another company in the next 30 days. When I ran these stats when I was working in Port Charlotte, I found it was more like 77% of expired sellers relisted with another agent slash company. And it often took at least 30 days to do that. Most of them did not relist in a 30-day period. Now, that may have been the whole keep your house off the MLS for 30 days to reset the days on market or what have you. But they simply did not, most again picked a new agent. So again, you've got a tremendous opportunity there. And the reason I mentioned the fact that it took many sellers a month or longer to relist, again, that's an opportunity for you, especially when it comes to mailings, and especially looking at expireds from recent history. And we'll talk about that in just a little bit. So as far as timing goes, you're going to find more expireds, at the end of the year, at the middle of the year, right? June 30th, December 31st, like January 1st and 2nd, July 1st and 2nd, you're just going to see the number of expireds kind of blow up, typically the beginning of the month, the end of the month. But at the end of the day, pun intentional, you should be prospecting expireds every day, but you'll find a lot more volume during those times. So let's talk about going after these guys. So it's very simple. 4 steps: find them, contact them, get an appointment with them, and then go do your presentation and knock their socks off, right? 4 simple things. So let's talk about finding them. Very easy, right? It couldn't be easier. You go into the MLS, you pull them up. Depending on what services your MLS provides, like we have Stellar MLS down here. They have a tool called IMAP. You can literally search expired, not yet relisted. Could not be easier. Okay. Very, very powerful tool. But if you don't have that, just going into the MLS and pulling them every day, pretty easy. If you don't want to do that, and you want some additional features, you can use a service called the Red X, which is about $60 a month. And that will give you a phenomenal dashboard to help you manage your like a database that will help you manage your outreach to this category. And they will also do FSBOs, and they will cross scrub it against the do not call registry, which is very important. So if you, I've had agents that have gotten on the Red X and then got off the Red X because they wanted to save $60, and about 3 months later got back on the Red X again because they kind of came to the conclusion that for the cost of an expensive cup of coffee a day, or even less. They could get this service, have it literally fed into their dashboard every morning, and then go through and take care of it. And again, the dashboard is very robust. It will give you much more than just the list. It will give you a way to sort of manage your prospecting efforts. So contacting expireds, very simple. You can call them, you can get them to call you. That would be sending text messages or mailings that generate interest and get them to reach out to you. Or you can literally go door knock them and visit them, or you can get them to visit you. And the way we can get them to visit us is through landing pages. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a short bit. But if you're not a listings to leads user, and we have classes on that, and I know Jess just did a Tech Tuesday at Lahaina Realty on listings to leads. There is a phenomenal landing page just for expired sellers that you can put on your Moxie website. And then you can market that out through your mailings or text messages by inviting expired sellers to visit that page to learn more about your marketing services for expired sellers. It's a very, very powerful tool, but that's a separate class for a separate day. All right, so let's talk about getting the phone number. If you have Remine Pro in your MLS like we do down here, there's a lot of data there. When you look up a property, you can get the seller's name, phone number, email address. It's not 100%. They don't have 100% of the phone numbers for 100% of the properties. Same with email addresses, but when they do, it will show you if it's in the do not call registry or not. Very powerful. There's a number of other services. One that an agent of mine really swore by was Public Records 360, and I think she was paying about $10 a month with a 1-year subscription, and she would use that to get phone numbers. Don't forget, always cross-reference the do not call registry before picking up the phone and making that phone call, because if you call somebody on the DNC and they get upset with you, the fine is $11,000. And I don't personally have $11,000 burning a hole in my pocket. If you do, great, but if you don't do that. So any questions about getting phone numbers? Awesome. Now, the tough part, we got the phone number. What do? We got to call them. So here's a script that I have used, and there's a ton of scripts, but this has kind of worked for me because it's, in my opinion, it approaches the expired seller, I feel, in a respectful sort of manner. So very simple. Hi, Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so. This is Roger Morris with ERA. I noticed your home is no longer being marketed in the MLS. Are you still interested in getting that sold? And then they answer yes or no. And if they answer no, then then there's kind of a different approach. But right now, let's go with the assumption that they still wish to sell. So may I ask, if you're planning to interview other agents for the job of marketing your house, how might I go about applying for that position? So would you guys agree that that's a fairly respectful approach? Give me a thumbs up. That would be you, because Wayne, you're the only person with your camera on, so you're my thumbs up guy. So yeah, it's a pretty respectful approach, I feel, and you're sort of empowering that seller by putting it in the context of applying for a job or a position, which has again always worked well for me. Then you would go on, one of the reasons listings expires because they don't receive adequate marketing exposure. Okay, again, we're talking about marketing. Marketing includes pricing. Everybody else is approaching these folks probably with a pricing conversation. You want to approach them with a marketing conversation. So they don't receive adequate marketing exposure, both online and in traditional media. If you were to place your house back on the market again, what would you like to see done differently in the marketing of your property? So you're now asking a question and trying to get them to talk. So assuming a dialogue ensues, then you would kind of go for the appointment, which is as follows. So why don't we do this? Let's set up a time that's convenient for you. I can take a walk through your home, work up some new numbers since the market has changed since you listed it, 6 months ago or whatever it was. After that, I'll share with you why I think your home didn't sell and tell you what we need to do to get your home sold in today's market. I'm available today or tomorrow at which works best for you, and you just go for the appointment. Now, going back to here, Are you still interested in selling it? If you get a no, then you need to start asking questions. And those questions would be something like, so may I ask, had you received a full price offer, last week when you were still on the market, would you have accepted that? Likely they would have said something like yes. And then you want to ask, if your house had sold, what were your plans? Were you going to stay locally and purchase another home here, or were you going to be moving out of the area? So you're trying to find what their goal was. And if they say, oh, we were going to move to North Carolina or what have you, you want to find out, without being too invasive. You might just say, oh, North Carolina, what, do you have family up there, or what was the motivator to move to that beautiful state? And then they fill that in, and you're trying to find that pain point. And then you might say, if we were still able to get your home sold in the next 60 to 90 days so that you could move to North Carolina, would that be a good thing? Pause and see if they'll continue to have that dialogue with you. Again, that's if they answer this question, are you still interested in selling it, with a no. You start asking what their goals were had it sold, what their plans were had it sold. Okay. So scripts and dialogues. If you go on this cool thing called the internet and use that tool known as the Google, as a friend of mine likes to say from a movie I guess she watched, you will find no shortage of scripts and dialogues for going after expired sellers. I would recommend you go into Leverage, go into ERA University, search the word expireds, and you will find our class that we have through ERA on expireds. And click the link there, and it will take you to a page where you can download the participant workbook for expireds. And there are some really cool dialogues and scripts in that workbook for you. So I would recommend you take advantage of those tools that you have available to you through ERA. The key with scripts and dialogues is, if you are not comfortable saying it, you're going to sound uncomfortable saying it. And if you sound uncomfortable and you don't come across as confident, you're probably not going to be successful in getting the appointment. So what I try to tell the agents with whom I work, find a script with which you are comfortable, get it memorized, sort of get it internalized, so you don't have to be reading it as you're having these conversations, and then personalize it and make it more your style. Okay. If you're comfortable with it, you'll sound confident with it. And if you sound confident with it, you'll be more successful with it. Wayne, anything you want to add to that? We also have there's a ERA scripts library, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, that's just, it's just so important to practice. So, I mean, we talk about that, with just your presentation, we talk about it, but if, going back to, likely this expired person could be, not all, could be angry, could be upset, practicing, responses and objections and all that. So just knowing that, scripts like this, they exist and stuff, it'll never go, it'll never go exactly like, oh, here's the script, but just knowing that, that this workbook's available for you, and just knowing some of the, scripts and practicing them will definitely help.
And to Wayne's point, find an accountability partner in your office or at home or wherever, and role play this stuff and get very comfortable with it. But don't be too afraid to reach out and make these phone calls, because nothing will make you better at talking to expired listing sellers than actually talking to expired listing sellers. And if you think to yourself, I'm not ready, so I'm not going to call Joe Seller, because if I call Joe Seller and I'm not ready, I'm not going to get that listing. I've got news for you. If you don't call Joe Seller, you're not going to get that listing. So think of it as practice. In fact, call Joe Seller feeling with the anticipation that you're going to fail to get an appointment, just so that it's practice for the next, Jane Seller. Okay. Just do it that way. You definitely do not want to spend all of your time getting ready to get ready and never actually implementing it. Thanks for that comment, Wayne. I appreciate that. Let's talk about personal visits. So you've seen an expired listing in the MLS. you either can't get the phone number or what have you, you've decided you're better in person, toes to toes, belly to belly. So you've decided that you're going to go door knock, and you want to do that. Some people are very good at that. Some people don't like that. There's a safety issue we'll chat about real quickly, but the purpose in this really is just to introduce yourself and drop off kind of a pre-listing kit. The goal is not to get in the house, and to make it less threatening, and I don't have this in the slide deck here, but if you feel safe doing so, this works with for sale by owners as well. If you're assuming you're parked in the driveway, and the situation allows for it, leave your engine running and leave your door open. And that basically telegraphs to the seller you have no intention of crossing their threshold, which is everyone's instant fear when a realtor shows up to a FSBO or an expired that you're going to try to get their listing right then and there. So the conversation is very similar to the phone call. You're asking for an appointment to come back, meet, but do be prepared. You might get invited in. I have had agents say they were invited in, and to that end, I recommend you do this with someone from a safety standpoint. I just think that's a really good idea. So that pre-listing kit that you're going to be dropping off should have maybe a cover letter, your resume, your biography, your testimonials. If you have a personal brochure or a rack card, I find those very powerful. What's going on in the market? We have powerful tools here in Florida through Florida Realtors. We have something called SunStats. We have some great market materials that you can literally hand to a prospective seller in a nice presentation folder. Examples of your marketing. If you have great brochures, Jess Shane, who's on the call here now, she is familiar with our Express Docs program and has helped agents here create some really nice trifold brochures for their listings. That would be a great piece to drop off. Copies of your expired letters, a collateral piece that says, something like 7 questions you should ask your, expired listing, 7 questions you should ask your next agent before you relist. Come up with that. Use ChatGPT to help you come up with what that would look like and speak to your value proposition and your strengths. And again, testimonials from customers, very valid. Here's kind of how that conversation goes. So you knock on the door. Hi, Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so. My name's Roger Morris. I'm with ERA. I noticed your home's no longer being marketed in the MLS. I just wanted to stop by, introduce myself, and leave some information for you. Again, may I ask, if you're planning to interview other agents for the job of marketing your house, how might I go about applying for that position? So again, you've got your engine running, your car door open, if it is safe to do so. And you're basically saying you have no intention of getting in the house. You just want to schedule an appointment for later or drop off some information and then follow up. Okay. Now we're going to talk about mail outs, and mail outs require more than just a one and done. It's going to take anywhere from 5 to 15 contacts before they list. 80% of sales are made on the 5th or higher contact. I think Wayne has probably seen that stat and had that stat in some of his classes as well. So what do you mail and how often do you mail it? For starters, by the way, one thing that anytime I'm on a expired listing appointment and the conversation lends itself to for me to ask the following question, I will do that. I would not compromise a listing appointment with this question. But again, if the conversation allows you to kind of weave this in there, I've had sellers say, "Oh my God, you people blew up my phone. All you realtors calling me, and I got more letters and mailers and blah, blah, blah." I would say, oh yeah, do you mind? Or I had one seller literally grab a whole stack of letters and such and say, I can't believe how much mail you guys sent me. And I would say, if you're not planning on keeping that, depending again on how my conversation was going, I'm always curious to see how my competition is marketing. Is that something you would, be willing to share with me? And I've had several sellers just hand me all of those letters, which is great. That means that they're connecting with me and my value proposition, probably going to list with me, because they're now giving away all of that material from the other agents that are trying to get an appointment with them. And it gives me an opportunity to look at what those mailers look like. And I have to tell you, most of them were really atrocious looking. I mean, like a copy of a copy of a copy, where like the letter is like skewed on the paper. speckled, and dear expired homeowner is the salutation. I mean, it just really couldn't be worse. It's in black and white. It's just terrible, terrible, terrible. So make sure your mail pieces are professional and attractive. Make sure that they speak to your value proposition and that of the company you work for. And make sure they talk about your marketing, your communication, and your negotiation, because we talked about those being the seller's top complaints. So this is what a good sales letter should look like. You should have a personalized salutation, dear Mr. and Mrs. Smith. It should outline your value proposition. I think bullet points are a great way to do that because it's easier to read. You should have a call to action. Without that, you're not going to get anywhere. I think you should have a compelling postscript. So if you know anything about direct mail, most direct mail training suggests that you have a good postscript, because most readers will look at the bottom of the page first, because they want to see who is writing them the letter. So the eyes go to the bottom of the letter to see the name first. That's just a part of direct mail. Studies have shown that. So if you have a compelling postscript, that will assist you, because odds are they're going to see that first before they even read your letter. So the postscript gives you the opportunity to put some hook in there that will get them sort of interested in reading the letter. The other thing I would recommend you do from a direct mail standpoint, use a plain number 10 envelope with a real stamp. Do not use your company envelope that has the return address. So my return address is Roger Morris, and then for ERA Cape Realty, it would just be 1616 ERA or West Cape Coral Parkway, Cape Coral, Florida. It does not have the company name on it. Now, before you tell me I'm breaking the rules because I need to have my company name on there, believe me, my company name is going to be on my letter. Okay, it's going to be in my business card, which is going to be in the letter. So I'm not breaking any rules. But if my letter doesn't get opened, it doesn't get read. If it doesn't get read, I don't get a phone call to get an appointment. You know how the story goes. So this is what that letter actually looks like in big. You can see my postscript, and I literally would highlight the postscript on the letter. It's not just highlighted for the slide deck you're looking at, it's highlighted in the letter they get. So I used to always use one of my value propositions with single property websites through a company called Listing Domains, because I worked at a company that did not have the types of tools that we have here at ERA. You actually have some very powerful tools that include single property websites. So I would recommend you link to one of those existing listings that maybe you have. But my postscript read like this. You can take a look at an example of how I market my listings by going to www. the address, and I always use the address of the house as the vanity URL. That'll cost you a few bucks, maybe $18 a year, something like that. And then parenthetically, I wrote, this is a listing that had expired with another company and agent before I listed it, and it's now sold. So always in your mail pieces, when you have success, especially with expireds, show that success. Share that success with the next expired that you're prospecting. Okay. This is a great piece that we have with ERA. It's the seller service guarantee. If you go into leverage and you go into pricing tools, there's a little pull down menu and you can download this. This is great for expires. This is also great for sale by owners. This would be like page 2 of my letter. If I was sending that letter that you just saw, if this is in the envelope and this is behind it, and you are offering a seller service guarantee, and maybe your postscript here could be, at ERA, we're so confident in our marketing and listing management that we offer a guarantee that if you're not happy, you can cancel your listing. Please see the second page or the attachment, blah, blah, blah. That would be a very strong letter, because guess what? Expired sellers are afraid they're going to have the exact same experience they had before. They're afraid they're going to be listed with somebody who's not going to communicate with them, not going to market for them, and not going to negotiate on their behalf. You can take away those three objections with this piece of paper. Discuss it with your manager. There's some fine print in there. It gives the company the right to cure any complaints, so you're not at the whim of just a random cancellation because somebody doesn't want to pay you your fee. There's some great stuff in here. Take a look at it, familiarize yourself with it, and I would put this in my listing, in my mailer to an expired seller. The other thing that I think a lot of agents don't do that I had great success with is using Express Docs and creating a quote unquote farm of expireds. So you can literally upload an Excel spreadsheet into Express Docs and then send mailers out to it. So I once got a listing appointment from a just sold postcard that I sent out. It wasn't even my listing that I sold. I sold somebody else's listing. And as you know, the Code of Ethics allows you to claim sale if you're the buyer's agent. So I did that and I sent out a card. Well, this actually was one of my listings, but so this was an expired seller that I had listed, got closed, and this is what the back of the card looks like. My listing at whatever street sold and closed. I use single property websites and aggressive online promotion for all my listings because 90% of buyers use the internet to search for homes. To me, the goal is to ensure that my listings are seen by every possible buyer whose criteria match the home I'm marketing. See for yourself at this website for outstanding results, yada, yada, yada. Give me a call today. So there's the call to action. So that's kind of what that looked like. But every time you have a just listed, under contract, or just sold opportunity, whether it was an expired seller or not, if you've got a database of expireds in Express Docs and you're going to do circle marketing around your listing, as you should, include those expireds and include those for sale by owners. You'll spend a lot of money on postage. I spent a lot of money on postage, but I've never got a better return on my investment than doing this because it's just one more piece in front of the expireds. Any questions about that? Wayne, that good?
Perfect. Sorry. Yeah.
So,
sorry. I had to unmute myself quick. So.
yeah,
No. So
worries.
yeah, good stuff.
All right. So this is Carla Stephenson, and what that means to you is absolutely nothing other than she was a new agent when she took this class and she started using mailers to expireds. And she got this listing just under $1 million. And this was back, I want to say probably 5 years ago. So it's probably worth like 12 million today. Just kidding. But this was a great listing that she got just from a mailer. Mailers do work. And again, you're better off to send 5 mailers to 5 sellers. That would be 25 mail pieces. That would serve you better than sending 1 mail piece to 25 sellers, which is the same amount of work. It's 25 letters. So don't stop with just one. Send your letter and then have another letter that you send a couple of days later and a couple of days later. Do you remember earlier when I was talking about the 77% of expireds relist with a different company, and most of those take more than 30 days? That 30-day period gives you the opportunity to put a lot of collateral material in front of them. And I can guarantee you something. If an expired seller calls you, you are a lot more likely to get the appointment than if you call them. Does that make sense? You pull up an expired this morning and you reach out and call them along with probably 500 other realtors down here. You're going to call that seller this morning. They are not as likely to give you an appointment as if they call you, because if they call you because of something you put in front of them that speaks to your value proposition, like that service guarantee we talked about, you are a lot more likely to get that appointment. So I totally believe in mailouts. The other thing I would recommend, and again, this kind of goes back to the multiple mailouts, most agents will pull up today's expireds and either call them, visit them, or send them something, and then that's that, one and done. Continue to follow up, but right now, the expired listing that expired 30 days ago, that's golden. And down here, where we have this thing called season, and everyone right now, as we're going into the summer months, is deliberating, do I take my house off the market and put it back on the market in November? I had that conversation with a seller yesterday. And I've had several of these conversations recently. where they're going to wait through the summer months. An expired seller today that's going to wait that amount of time before they relist, you have such an opportunity to put such great marketing materials in their hands that when they're ready to pick up the phone and start interviewing people, if your stuff looks professional, if you have a personalized salutation, if you're putting extra collateral materials in there and examples of your marketing, and you're driving them back to a website where maybe you're talking about how you service your your listings, I think you're going to do a lot better. All right, so that's it. FSBOs, we're kind of running short on time here. That was expired, so we're going to hit FSBOs next. Any questions about expireds before we move on? Cool. Hearing none, we'll hit it. All right, so understanding FSBOs, why do they do it? They think they're saving money. They don't know a good real estate agent. Maybe they know plenty of bad real estate agents because they probably had a bad experience in the past. They maybe have sold successfully FSBO before, and they don't really know what good realtors do, but they know what weak realtors don't do. So again, this is an opportunity to educate. Finding them couldn't be easier. Number one source would be Zillow. Go into Zillow, search homes for sale, click the button that says for sale by owner. You will have no shortage of them to choose from. Just be sure that they're not subject to a limited services brokerage agreement, which is still a listing. So you do want to just cross check the MLS. So even if you find them on Zillow, or somewhere, or like a FSBO website as a for sale by owner, do check the MLS to make sure they're actually not listed with a limited services company. What do you say, what you don't say? Don't use the I have a buyer for your house ploy. They can see right through that unless you actually do have a buyer that's interested in their house. That's different. Don't fake it. That doesn't work. They get that. They know that's what you're doing if you choose to do that. You just want to be knowledgeable about their property, because that's what you do for a living, and you work with buyers. Some of those buyers might be interested in this particular listing. So you're asking for a 15-minute preview, and you're not going to give a listing presentation when you get there. So a sample dialogue you might use is, hi, this is, Roger Morris with the RA. I was showing property in your neighborhood, or I was at a home inspection in your neighborhood, or dropping the kids off to school in your neighborhood, whatever the true story is. And I noticed your home is for sale. May I ask, how much are you asking for the house? And so fair question. So they tell you the price. I work in your area and like to be familiar with all available homes. Would it be possible for me to stop by for a quick 15-minute preview of your house? And then just pause and see what they say, see how the conversation goes. Many of them will basically say, we're not listing, we're not working with a broker, we're not paying a commission. And that's your opportunity to say, fine, that's fine. That's not why I'm calling. I just want to familiarize myself with your home in case I have a buyer or somebody in my office has a buyer for whom it might be a good fit. You do want to follow up with these people probably on a weekly basis, and you want to add value to their experience. So rather than calling somebody up and telling them that they can't sell their house on their own, because they don't know what they're doing, I would recommend that you approach this as you're trying to help them. So if you do drop by, leave something of value with them. There are some great reports from RPR, Realtors Property Resource. Robin, do you have a question? I see your hand up. Okay. If you do, throw it in the chat or unmute. We'll be happy to help. So
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Sorry. I do have a quick question. So
Yeah.
so I have quite a few in my neighborhood that actually have for sale by owner signs out, and they have their telephone number on there.
Yep.
Am I allowed to call them if they are on the do not call list?
If you have a real buyer that is interested in seeing the property, yes.
Okay, and I do.
Do not,
okay.
No. Great question. I appreciate you asking that. That has been NAR's interpretation of the do not call registry and FSBOs for a very long time, and that is still their current position on that.
Okay, thank you.
Great question. Again, you want to continue to follow up and add value. So if you're dropping off things like an article on how to do great photography, or resources like home inspectors or mortgage lenders or title companies that can help them with their closing. Um, I've had agents mock up flyers for the buyer, or I'm sorry, for the seller, where it's, here's a great flyer you can use to put in your flyer box out front, that kind of thing. You're just adding value to their experience and you're giving suggestions and advice. I had one that I was calling, and while I was on the phone with her, she said something about, I'm not ready to list my house yet, and I don't think I want to list it with an agent. I'm going to try to sell it on my own. I've got a room I need to paint. It's got paneling in it. Do you know anything about painting paneling? This is a true story. And of course, my dad had just done this over in Fort Lauderdale. So I said, actually, that's interesting. My father just went through that himself and got his paneled room painted. Let me find out what he did and what worked for him. So I made that phone call and got some information, and I also Googled it and pulled some stuff off the internet and printed it out. And I just stuck it in an envelope and I mailed it to her with a cover letter that just said, "Hey, it was great, chatting with you today. And here's some information my dad used, and here's some information that I found online to help you with painting your room." And I called her back about a week later, and she answered the phone, and I said, "Hi, it's Roger Morris at XYZ Realty." And she goes, "I told you I'm not ready for you yet." And she was kind of agitated that I called. And I said, "No, that's not why I'm calling. We had talked about painting that paneled room of yours, and I had sent you some stuff in the mail. I just wanted to make sure you got it." And she goes, "Oh, I've got your letter right here. But I didn't actually open it." So I can hear her tearing this envelope open. And she was like so tickled that I took the time to send her information and be helpful. She ended up listing her house with me. I mean, it took, several more phone calls and follow up, but I kept adding value to her experience. Another example I had, we had a for sale by owner come by the office one day and drop off a bunch of flyers for their property for sale. And they were actually offering a 3% to any agent that brings their buyer. So the receptionist handed out all of these flyers to the agents that were in the office. And since I was in a cubicle and kind of in an open area, I could hear all of the agents kind of mumbling and grumbling and complaining about this for sale by owner. How dare they try to sell their house on their own and only offer us 3%? So I thought, this is a golden opportunity. I can't believe these other agents aren't seeing this opportunity. So I literally wrote the sellers back a letter. um, and I included a flyer for a listing I had literally within a quarter mile of their house, which was an expired listing that I had just listed. And my letter said, "Thank you so much for dropping off your flyer. Your listing is very similar to one I have, within, in the same area. I've attached my own flyer. If I show my listing to any of my buyers and they're not interested, I will certainly call you and bring them over and show them your house. So thanks for the opportunity." That's all I did, just a nice little thank you letter. So a couple of months later, I get a phone call and she says, "We've been FISBO. You were the only agent that responded to our drop off of flyers. We'd like to interview you to list our house." I got that listing, absolutely drop dead gorgeous home with tennis courts. And it was just very, very nice. And it was a very expensive home for the time, but it was amazing. All of the agents in my office were upset with this person for being for sale by owner. And all I did was say, "Hey, thanks. Let me help you out. Here's how I can help you." Um, just offer assistance to them. I think they appreciate that. Um, if you do get that previewing appointment, do not for under any circumstances go into a listing presentation. You're just there to learn about their home and their goals and see how you might be able to help them. Leave your card behind, and that last bullet point again, something of value like to help them show or stage the home, or resources like stagers and closing companies and such as that. Follow up with them on a regular basis. An agent I managed a few years back, he would visit a for sale by owner literally every week, as I just kind of described you should do, and would drop off something of value. And again, when they were ready to list, they called him, just because he had been very courteous, very respectful, and very helpful. Never intonated that, "Hey, you don't know contracts, you need me." Nothing like that. You want to be very supportive of their efforts. So this is a letter that a friend of mine up in Anchorage, Alaska uses to prospect for FSBOs. This is what the overall look is, and this is what it looks like blown up. And it just says, notice your house for sale. Welcome. I like to keep up to date with homes that are in the neighborhoods that I work in. And he goes on to say, I respect your do-it-yourselfer approach to trying to sell your house on your own. And in that regard, I want to offer some help. So he offers help to service providers like home inspectors, lenders, etc., that they may need when they go under contract. And then he says, hey, if you're moving, depending on where you're moving to, I can help connect you with a realtor there, and they can assist you with your home search in your destination city. Then he goes on to say, I truly want to help people, and talks about how 90% of for sale by owners ultimately do list with a realtor, and there's no shame in that. And if your home doesn't sell and you decide to list, I'd appreciate the opportunity to interview with you. I think this is I think it's a great letter. It's just a very helpful, nice letter. So again, going about this, helping them, offering them assistance, that's the way to really connect with them. Back to, they want to save the commission. You need to, when that conversation comes up, you want to reframe that from a cost of sale. If I pay you, that's the cost to sell the house. I want to save that cost. You want to reframe that to a net proceeds. We all know from the realtor, then the NAR profile of home buyers and home sellers, that agent assisted property sales sell for an average sales price of significantly higher than those that are for sale by owner. One of my favorite examples of that is the owner of forsalebyowner.com actually listed his house after attempting to sell it on his own, listed his house with a real estate agent who listed it for more, like significantly more, than he had it listed himself as a for sale by owner, and got it sold. I'm not making up that story. If you go to Google and you Google owner of forsalebyowner.com sells house with realtor nets higher proceeds, you will find that article online. I personally think that that is a great article to very respectfully share with a prospective for sale by owner. So if you were saying, many for sale by owners ultimately will list their property with a real estate professional because we can expose you to a broader market and ultimately net you a higher sales price as a result of that. And then, sort of comma, interestingly, even the owner of for sale by owner himself chose to list with a professional realtor and ended up netting more proceeds. Please see attached article. That would be a great mail piece, I think, personally. Because people, they take pride in what they're doing, but they think they're saving money, and they really are not. Because again, you can do a much broader marketing piece than they can. So, objectivity and handling criticism of the house, that's a big deal. Negotiating is a huge deal that you can assist them with, that they may not be able to do. So those are some of the advantages. And again, they're very easy to find, but the approach is, again, your value proposition, but then helping them. Okay. Like helping here, I'm here to help you sell your house on your own. And by the way, if that doesn't work out and you're ready to interview agents, I'd love the opportunity to talk to you about doing that for you. So with that, I would recommend that you commit to a plan. And one of my favorite sayings in the business is time on task over time beats talent every time, which kind of goes back to the don't worry about if you don't think you're perfect at calling expireds or for sale by owners. Just do it. You will get perfect at it over time. Just do it, because the ones you don't call, you're not going to list those houses. The ones you do, you have a shot at it, and you will improve your skills. So schedule your time, block that off every day, especially with the expireds, because every day there's going to be a new run of expireds. By the way, you can also, now depending on how your MLS categorizes things, but for our Florida people, if you see a canceled or a terminated listing in the MLS, you can prospect those too. You cannot prospect in our MLS, at least, withdrawn listings. Those still have a valid listing agreement. They've just been pulled from the MLS. So that's it, guys. That's all I have. I appreciate your time this morning, and I am sorry I went 10 minutes over, and I know I blew through that last part. Any questions?
Well, what I'm going to add real quick is also with expireds, think about going back 6 months. Think about going back a year. So whether you use Red X or pay for, or you just sit down and like, hey, I'm going to get in mode and just do some research. So pull expireds from up to a year ago or however long, and then just do the homework. Like, okay, 123 Main Street. Now I'm going to go do a quick search. Like, did it ever get relisted? Did it ever get sold? Is that still valid? Because even Roger saying like in the summer in Florida, like if they're not going to list until November, like if in October you go, oh, what expired in the last week? Well, there were properties that expired in March, April, May, that those folks are actually waiting until November. And it's the same up north. We like, oh, I don't want to list my house in the winter. So if you just go back a week or two or what expired today, so just think about going back further and just seeing those folks might maybe change their mind, but they might still want to sell. So just kind of wanted to throw that out as well.
Absolutely. No, that's great stuff, Wayne. Yeah, like I say, in the last week, I've had conversations with two sellers who are like, yeah, we're not gonna do anything until the November time frame because it's slow. It's slow in our neighborhood. There's X number of listings in our neighborhood. Nothing's moving. No one's getting showings. So we're not going to do anything until November. So right there, you've got that big gap of time to put some great marketing pieces in front of them. I would not recommend, texting or calling or bugging those people to death. But if you can get their mailing address and put quality pieces in front of them, and better still, if you can promote like a landing page that you might have where they can go and learn a little bit more about you, or if you've got some videos. I don't know if you can see this. I'm going to hold that up. Wayne, can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay. There's like a, like right there. Do you see like that little thumbnail of, it's like a YouTube dealing?
Yeah.
Okay. And there's a QR code. All right. This is a page from a boating magazine, and it's a yacht broker who's run a full page ad with his yacht listings. And in the middle of the page, there is a screenshot of a YouTube dealing, like a little YouTube video with a little play button, and there's a QR code. Well, this is literally a page from a magazine, right? So you can't click the button in a magazine, right? It doesn't work, but you can scan the QR code, right? So I scanned this guy's QR code, and it brings you to his yacht brokerage. And there's this great video that he talks about how he markets and sells yachts. And I thought, what a great technique. So he's combining print advertising with a video to try and get people to, consider his yacht brokerage services. Well, you can do the same thing in a mail piece. You could literally say, you can have a screen if you have a YouTube video that speaks to expired sellers or for sale by owners. You could literally have a screenshot of that in your mailer and say, I invite you to visit with me online and learn a little bit more about how we get our property sold. We have a video there that speaks to our marketing, blah blah blah. I just thought that was ingenious, and of course, I'm sitting there on my lanai reading this magazine, scanning that QR code, watching this guy's video, and I'm like, this is great stuff. If I was in the market, honestly, when I was selling my boat, if this guy had been local, he probably would have gotten an interview from me. He was, the video was that good. And, video lets you get to know somebody without having to invite them into your living room. And one thing I've always said, real estate is one of those weird sales things where you have to invite the salesperson into your living room. Imagine if you were going to go, if you were going to sell a car, if you had to invite the car dealer into your living room, right? Or if you were going to buy a car, you had to invite the car salesman into your living room. It's kind of weird. We have to do that in our business, and we're not sure what we're going to get. Most people don't really they have salespeople fear. So this is an opportunity to get yourself in front of them without them having to invite you into your living room. So I think that was a great combination of print advertising and online advertising that just worked really synergistically. All right, guys, that's all I got. I enjoyed you being with me this morning. Thank you for your time. I hope it was valuable. Reach out if you have any questions. Wayne's got the recording. It'll go in the library. And if I can help you in any way, let me know.
Thank you so much, Roger. That was excellent. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So,
Absolutely my pleasure. All right, guys, have a good one.
take care, everyone.
Thank you.